Joining us right now is John Barry from the Worldwide Leader in Sports, fresh off of calling the second consecutive overtime game to open the Toronto-Miami NBA Eastern Conference semifinal series. Back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, John?
Hello, Rich. Is your mind clear now since the draft's over?
Well, I mean, Tunsil clear or just Rich Eisen clear? How clear are you talking about right now,
Well,
John?
I don't know how clear Tunsil will ever be, but it's good to see that he signed.
Have you seen anything like that, even in the NBA, where
No.
anything like that, right, John?
I've not seen gas masks on the court at any time.
Well,
no.
not just that, but just like a video that comes out during an NBA draft. That hasn't happened in an NBA draft. That hasn't. We've never seen anything like that, right?
No, I have not. D'Angelo Russell might be looking around next draft to do something. I don't know.
Well, we had Byron Scott on the show yesterday, and he said he tried to let D'Angelo Russell and Nick Young hammer things out themselves, and we saw that didn't work out very well. And that, D'Angelo Russell might be an issue moving forward for free agents. Do you think NBA players would have second thoughts about going to Los Angeles because he's there, based on all of that, John?
No, I really don't think so. I mean, obviously at the time it was quite a shocking ordeal, but you know what? I guess that's today's day and age. The social media and all this stuff that's going on. But I think in the end, it's going to be something that we'll all forget about and be able to move forward.
How come you're not on Twitter?
You know what? I don't like. I don't like it.
What do you mean?
It's just so negative. And quite honestly, I don't think anybody cares what I think or what I'm doing.
John, you're an analyst. People do care what you think. I mean, that's why you're on this show. I care what you think.
Do you care? Do you really care, Rich?
Well, yeah, I do, John. Yeah. Yeah, I do. There's a lot of NBA analysts that we could have on this show, but John Barry, I choose you. I say, let's go get him back. You're compelling.
I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
But I'm pretty much like Jerry Seinfeld. I care about things that mean nothing. I'm a show about nothing.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
And you like more than 140 characters, essentially, is what you're saying. Also.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So then let's move on to what you thought about last night, because I care. I care.
Okay.
What do we read out of the first two games of the series that you're calling?
Well, it hasn't been very aesthetically pleasing basketball. It's been pretty ugly. Miami really had a great opportunity to go up 2-0 and put a stranglehold on this series. And, they've just turned the ball over at an alarming rate, over 20 turnovers in both games, and had another opportunity to win and a tough place to win. Toronto's a great place, great fan base at Jurassic Park outside. It's nuts. And they got to be disappointed that they're not up 2-0, but I think they've shown that they're probably the favorite to get this thing done. And
the fact that Lowry made the shot that put Toronto up 3, we all know that the game went into overtime. I mean, he kept firing away at will. I guess he's got that shooter's mentality, huh, John?
Yeah, well, he needs to. I mean, he can't play tentative, and I still think there were a few plays that he could have been more aggressive, that he was passive. And, I mean, the guy's too good. He had a great year. He struggled in last year's playoffs. There's really no explanation for it. It's something that's obviously in his mind. Went and shot the ball after game 1 till 1 o'clock in the morning in the arena. And, there's just so much attention brought to it. It just gets to be harder and harder as days go by, and you just got to forget about it and play the way he's played his whole life.
Yeah, I saw that about Larry. You know how I saw it, John? Do you know how I saw it?
How did you see that?
Twitter.
Yeah.
See?
It could be a useful tool.
I'm going to turn you around. There's going to be an @John Barry by the end of this conversation. There's definitely going to be that.
Okay.
As long as it's available. So when it all comes down to it, let's talk Spurs and Thunder, because this seems to me to be the most compelling series that's going on right now, with all due respect to Miami and in Toronto, because out west, what happened on Monday night with all those calls. Why wouldn't I, if I'm a coach in the NBA, tell my guys, last 10 seconds, just take somebody out? Because they're not going to call it. Why wouldn't I do something like that, John?
Well, that's pretty much what happens. I mean, if you looked at every play in that situation, 10, 15 seconds to go, ball out of bounds, everybody grabs jerseys and holds. Screens are illegal. Those are calls that aren't going to be made. I mean, you remember Michael Jordan pushing off on Byron Russell back in '98 or whatever it was. They're not calling that. James Harden did it in the Golden State series in the first round. You're not going to call that.
So Would you really advocate coaches to just basically say just go ahead and shove people around because they're not going to call
Well,
it, or do you
yeah,
think that,
absolutely.
or do you think there's a
Yeah.
backlash from what happened on Monday that you're going to see things called a lot tighter?
Well, it's possible. I mean, I know they complain about Ginobili put his toe on the sideline. Guys do that all the time. I mean, it's not. They're not going to call that. And the bottom line is you have to foul anyway. So what's the difference that, if the guy's throwing the ball in bounds and you just bear hug somebody and they make the call? If they don't, you get away with it. It's great. But again, that's just those are calls that aren't going to be made at the end of the ball game that are going to change the outcome.
What do you think about this 2-minute report that the NBA's instituted, where it's all transparent about whether the refs got the calls right in the last 2 minutes?
Well, I think it's all well and good if you're not an NBA official, because it's like I don't know. I get it, transparency, whatever, but man, it puts those guys in a tough spot, and it's a very difficult job, and I don't know what it really does. I mean, I think it just makes people more upset that there's a fact that 5 calls weren't made that could change the outcome of the game. I don't know what purpose that serves.
Well,
But I feel bad for the officials.
Well, how about this? If this is what I told Byron Scott, and now I'm going to tell you this too. Why not allow, if the NBA is going to be all transparent and honest about what happens in the last 2 minutes of the game with the officiating, why not allow coaches and players to comment their full thoughts on the officiating in the last 2 minutes in a post-game press conference?
Yeah, well, I think that would be fair.
Don't you think? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I know. I think it would be fair. But, the problem is, too, that we have replay, but replay can only look at certain things. If a ball goes out of bounds and the guy has a bear hug on and it's a foul, you can't call the foul. All you're looking at is to see whether the ball went off of whatever player it might be. So there's so much that would have to go into it. I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
What adjustment do you think we're going to see tonight in Oklahoma City based on the first couple games of that series?
Well, I don't know. It's strange to see, such domination from a team, and then the next game it's a completely different ball game. You got to give OKC a lot of credit. I think San Antonio is a team that needs to play under 100. That's where they're at their best. They're back to being a defensive juggernaut like they were when they won their titles. So they want to slow the game down. Make it a half-court game, continue to feed Aldridge, who's just been absolutely incredible, Kawhi Leonard as well. So when you see 2 games like that, you really don't know what to expect tonight, whose style of play will come forward. But it's, OKC, give them a lot of credit for bouncing back after that thrashing.
And when would you play Steph Curry if you're Steve Kerr, John?
Well, if they go up 3-0, I'd hold them out again. My only concern being that if they do get by, if they do win the next 2 games and he doesn't play, you're talking about 3+ weeks that he won't play a basketball game as you go into the next series. So I'd like to get him 1 game. If he's ready to go and there's not going to be any further damage, I'd really like to get him at least a game and maybe even 2. Before they move to the next round.
And then around the league, I want to hit you on a couple things. Robert Reed, former Rocket, was very critical of James Harden, saying Harden's only out for himself. Is that a fair criticism, you think, John?
I don't think it is. I mean, if you look at the makeup of their team, he's really the only guy on their team that can make plays with the basketball for himself or others. They don't have a lot of playmaking, and that's kind of the style that they've adopted, threes or layups. There's not a lot of in-between game, and the guy's pretty good. He was almost the MVP, 2 years ago, and I think if you put some players around him that can make some more plays, that the ball will come out of his hands, and he's an excellent player.
John Barry here on the Rich Eisen Show. There's a vacancy in New York for the Knicks head coach, as we all know, and the conversation going there about Phil Jackson is that he's past his prime. I mean, that is absolutely reading in between the lines what people are saying about the triangle here in 2016. Is the triangle an outmoded offense in today's NBA, John?
Well, if you stick a bunch of Hall of Famers in it, it'll work. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, look at the guys that he had that he ran it with.
Right.
For the 11 championships, he had 2 Hall of Famers on every team that he had. So I can't say that the triangle won't work. Yeah, the game has changed. It's more about the three-point shot. But if you give me 2 Hall of Famers, I can win with any type of offense, I would believe.
So you're saying Carmelo and Aaron Aflalo does not reach that standard, is what you're saying, John?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
2 to be determined.
Okay. Just see, now that would have been a great Twitter line right there. Just for instance, just giving you for instance right there. That'd have been
I'll read some of yours, and then maybe I can,
that'd have been
come up with some ideas.
That'd have been a killer tweet, as the kids would say. And Frank Vogel's firing, there was some criticism of Larry Bird in mentioning at one point about how Vogel spent a considerable amount of time asking for Bird to reconsider. What did you think about that, John?
Yeah, it's a strange one, and then he says, I'm not firing him. I'm just not renewing his contract, which I guess technically is correct. But it really took me back. I thought Vogel was an excellent coach. It was a major change in philosophy in Indiana this year. It's always been a team with a bunch of big guys. You go back to the Davis brothers and Rick Smits and Roy Hibbert. They had some great runs to the Eastern Conference Finals. Couldn't get by Miami with LeBron. But I thought he was a great coach. Obviously, we're not around there every day, and there might be some philosophy, differences between Larry and Frank. But that guy will land on his feet. He's a heck of an NBA coach.
Did you see Stan Van Gundy said Andre Drummond is open to the idea of shooting free throws underhanded? Did you see that?
Is that right?
That is true.
Well, yeah, the question is, are you more embarrassed to shoot underhand or more embarrassed to shoot 35%?
It should be 35%. 100%.
Wouldn't you be more embarrassed?
I would be more.
You're in the NBA.
I would be more embarrassed to shoot 35% overhand than shoot 90% underhand. I want to make the shots here.
I think there's no question. If you could shoot 35%, I would assume.
Is it for like $1,000 for charity in between the first and second quarter of a game with me coming off the bench, or what? What is it?
I think you could come out of the stands.
Okay.
Put your beer down.
Okay.
Walk over there and take 10 free throws, and I think you can make 4.
Okay. All right. It's by the way,
I put my money on you.
By the way, light beer, John. Okay. Just all you have to do is just take a look at me.
Who's your sponsor? Coors, Miller?
I'm open for business. I'm not like Peyton Manning right now. I'm flat out open for business. There's no two.
Well, Heineken Light's good.
Okay, thank you, John. See that, John Barry. I want you on Twitter, man. I think you'd be great at it. I think you'll be really good at it. But this is an uphill battle.
We'll give it some thought.
Good chatting, John. We'll chat soon. Safe travels.
You got it, bud.
You bet. That's John Barry.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.